Well, hello and welcome to the Bumper to Bumper podcast. I am Dave Riccio here along with Jon Riggle, and we are putting you in the know when it comes to your car. And John and I were just talking, John and I work around the clock. And it is, we got here at the shop at 6:15 this morning to do podcasts, and then we're going to start doing shop at 7:30.
Yeah.
And so we decided, we're half asleep when we get in here. So we are done doing before work episodes. We are going to move our shows to Saturday so we don't seem like we're asleep when we're trying to go through this. But we pretty much eat and breathe auto repair.
Yeah.
It is what we do. So anyway, John, because this is it's Tri-City Transmission and Auto Repair. And we've got technicians dedicated to general repair, and then we've got technicians dedicated to transmission repair. And they are somewhat two different animals.
Yeah.
Your background, believe it or not, is general repair. But and when we talked, and first time we got together, I said, so what do you think about working in a transmission shop? You said, hey, it's the one thing I haven't mastered in this business.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, and I said, well, there's only 47 transmission problems. And that was actually that used to be true, man. It's gotten to be so many more even since then.
Yeah.
It has changed a lot since you started here.
I was thinking about it the other day. Just since I started, I had to get really familiar really quick with CVTs. And then we started seeing the DCTs, the dual clutch transmissions. So we had to learn all those. And then we had the 6, 8, and 10 speeds.
6, 8, and 10 speeds.
All came one right after the other. The learning curve here, it was straight up for me, man.
And it was quick.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's changing. I mean, we went by, did a seminar on Saturday in relation to 10 speeds.
Yeah.
And I wish there was a little bit more in there, but, it was, some of it was review, but man, they're a whole lot harder to diagnose than it was in the old days, I mean, when you had people came in, when I got into the business, it was like 4-speed was the norm.
Yeah.
Right. And now 10-speed is now the norm.
Yeah.
It's totally a whole lot more complicated than working on a 4-speed
Yeah,
transmission.
it is because of the combinations of the clutches and the way the clutches apply and come off. It used to be, you could have one clutch come on, one clutch go off. Now we've got 3 coming on and 3 going off, all at one time. And it's, wow, okay, which one is causing the issue? So that can be hard to pick out.
Happens really quickly. And the transmission, when it was a 4-speed, it shifted from first gear to second gear to third gear to fourth gear. Now we might shift from 1 to 3. We might start in 2. We might go 2, 6, 8. I mean, there's all kinds of different shift
I was
strategies.
driving one the other day. I was going 25 miles an hour and it was in 7th gear.
Right.
I'm like,
really?
How did it do that? And the first 4 shifts, I couldn't even count. The first 4 shifts happened so quick, and there's such close ratios. It was like, wow, I got to stop and do this again.
Right. And so when I started in the business, all the transmissions had bands in them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now you don't see a band in the modern transmission.
Yeah.
So a lot has changed, and I'll start with what is traditional automatic transmission, and it uses multiple clutches. They are wet clutches, and they're hydraulically applied.
Okay.
So in modern or the traditional automatic transmission, essentially we're putting ratio in at the beginning. There's a pump, hydraulic pressure pump, and depending on which component we stop, we get a different ratio.
Mm-hmm.
And we stop components inside the transmission with clutches, with bands, and with sprags. Sprags are one-way clutches. They roll one way and lock the other way. And so we're stopping components. That was a traditional transmission, automatic-wise. So even, the 4-speed automatic transmission started out with General Motors. It was like in the 40s is when they really started. And there's been progression ever since. But, GM in the early days, they pioneered a lot of technology.
Yeah.
And really the traditional automatic transmission. So they had bands in them to stop components. Bands are no longer. So the modern automatic transmission, no more bands. And the computer has gotten a lot more advanced. So we can control things, we can modulate things, we can do things differently, and it's programming is a huge deal.
Yeah.
It really affects the way they work. So that's a traditional automatic transmission, and the replacement for that, and those haven't gone away. They've gotten more complicated, more computer controlled, and then we have that, and those I don't think are going to go away. But we've had this huge push for fuel efficiency. And the push for fuel efficiency brought us into the CVT transmission, which stands for constant variable transmission.
Sure.
And when people think of CVTs, they immediately think of Nissan.
Yeah.
Because Nissan was the first one to go full blast
They
into
went
that.
full bore on it.
And they started that around 2002 with the Nissan Murano. And actually, I thought of those early Muranos, I thought they did pretty well.
I don't recall them having the problems we have with the newer ones.
Right.
You know, it was actually quite a while before we started seeing big problems with those. But that was a bigger version of the CVTs that they tried to put in all the other ones. And that one's a little stouter. I would say to this day we see less Murano issues than we do with
some of
the
the
smaller versions.
smaller versions.
Yeah.
So CVT, and the idea behind the fuel efficiency is that you can operate the motor where it's the most fuel efficient. But I also think that's why you're seeing the 8 and 10 speeds is they can operate the motor more efficiently, keep it in the sweet spot.
That's the whole trick. Engines are really efficient. Internal combustion engines can be really efficient in certain RPM and torque ranges or load ranges, right? So we can have this situation where the thing is most fuel efficient right at 2,000, 2,200 RPM. It'll vary for every platform, but the fuel efficiency is right there. So if we have these continuously variable transmissions, we can control the load on the engine by changing these gear ratios. And they're not actually gear ratios anymore. We've got 2 pulleys with a big belt in between them, big steel belt in between them. And we have infinite ratios in between. Instead of having 10 speeds, we have whatever ratio we want. So when you go drive them, they have an unusual feel to them, most of them. I take them out and I drive them. One of the things I do to test them is I pin the throttle to the floor and I watch to see what the RPM does. So as soon as the thing starts to move, they lock the torque converter up. So we're applying all the torque to the drivetrain there. And then we vary the ratio to maintain a specific RPM. And these things will come up, they'll go up to 5,000. When they get 5,000, 6,000 RPM, just before they get to red line, you'll feel the ratio start to change on them, and they'll hold it right there. And so that's one of the things that I do is I watch and I see, I pin them to the floor. If the thing, over revs and goes up into the rev limiter or something, ooh, that trans is slipping. So, they have an odd feel to them. I hate most of them.
Oh, yeah. Well, early CVTs, when you drove them, they felt like they were broken.
Yeah, they always felt like they were slipping.
But I think that Nissan, particularly as a manufacturer, realized that, so they synthesized shift points so it
Synthetic
feels
shifts.
like it's shifting.
Oh, they did a lot of stuff to try to
Make it feel
clean that
normal.
up and make people like them. People used to complain about them a lot.
Right.
And they always felt like they were decoupled from the car. It always felt like the transmission was slipping, like the engine was revving higher than you normally would if you were used to driving a regular car.
Well, Nissans have gotten a bad reputation, and probably rightfully so. They have, but at the same time, too, as someone will come in and they've got 180,000 miles on their CVT, and you call them and tell them that their transmission needs a major repair, and they go, "Oh yeah, those CVTs are horrible." I'm like, "Well, wait a minute, you just got 180,000 miles on it. That's not bad for a regular transmission."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they get a little bit of, because they're different, so they get a little bit of a bad reputation for that. The other reason they get a bad reputation is most general mechanics don't even understand them.
Yeah.
They don't understand how to diagnose them. They often diagnose them wrong. I mean, we've seen CVTs come in on a tow truck, and we fix it with a taillight bulb. And I know that's kind of a weird story, but there's a lot of reasons they can go into a fail-safe mode that aren't related to the actual transmission.
Yeah.
So electronically, something happens in the vehicle, and I mentioned the taillight bulb because the elements cross over in the taillight bulb and backfeed voltage to the brake switch, which works with the Prindle switch. And it throws the transmission into a fail-safe mode. But I like to say that CVTs are often replaced in error, and they replace the transmission, and then they figure out why. After they've done it, and it's doing exactly the same thing, they figure out why, that it was the taillight bulb or some other. Literally, Nissan put together a bulletin for that because it was such a common thing.
Yeah, or a torn inlet air boot.
Torn inlet.
Had a bunch of those that came in. The guys thought it had a transmission problem. It's got a big tear in the inlet air boot, so as the motor rocks back a little bit, it opens up that tear, and you get a big surge, and that boot's sitting here doing this.
Yep.
And you get a car that goes down the road like this. Oh, that's got to be a transmission. Nope.
That's where you can be your own worst enemy because people assume, oh, I've got a Nissan, it's got a CVT in it, and therefore it's a problem. And when in fact, I've seen the inlet air boot. I've seen you come up with that a couple times on Nissan products where they were certain they already needed a transmission when in fact they didn't. So you got to be careful when you're Googling, because you can get something. And it's hard to differentiate between what is your problem, and symptoms and that type of stuff, because it's all going to sound similar. I had a guy call me the other day. He was a traveling nurse, so he was going out, and he goes, "Well, so what do you? I've been doing some Googling on it, and I'm pretty sure it's the CVT transmission." Mm-hmm. I go, okay, so how do you feel when people come in and they've been all over WebMD and they want to come talk to you? And he goes, point well taken. Because you can have chest pain because you got indigestion, or you can have chest pain because you have a heart attack. Well, they both hurt in the chest, but they're two totally different procedures. Yeah. So on CVTs, you got to make sure if you are having a problem that you are working with somebody that knows something about them other than we just take one out and put another one in. Because there's a lot of that. I think a lot of times they get swapped out, and they didn't need to be swapped out. Yeah. But so CVTs, that's a biggie. And then let's talk about manual transmissions. I drove a stick shift. My first car was a 1984 CJ7 Jeep. Yeah. And it had a clutch pedal and a stick shift, and I loved driving it because I felt cool because I got to be a part of the process. Right. And so that was a thing. The modern car, I don't even barely think they make a manual transmission anymore. Yeah, you're only traditional manual. Yeah.
I mean even in the high-end sports cars, those are pretty much gone even. They've all gone to the DCTs, the dual clutch transmissions, but
okay, so let's talk about that. So it's still a manual transmission. So a manual transmission doesn't use sprags. It doesn't use wet clutches. It doesn't use bands. It doesn't use anything like that. It's pretty much
gears.
Gear to gear. Yep. Right? So you just gear to gear. And in the modern manual transmission, now they've gone to these dual clutch transmissions. And I'm just going to think of like a Ford Focus would probably be a common one. Mm-hmm. And what they've done is they put electronic motors to move the shifter, if you will. Yeah. So they got a couple of motors to do that. And then they've got two clutches, dual clutch transmission. Mm-hmm. And what they are 6 speeds. So gears 1, 3, and 5 are on one shift fork, I guess you would say. Yeah. Or one shaft. And then 2, 4, and 6 are on the other. Mm-hmm. And this does bring fuel efficiency because the shifts become very quick. So we can have gear 1 on and gear 2 is ready. We just turn a different clutch on.
Well, you also do the other thing. You eliminate a torque converter.
Right.
Okay, so you eliminate all the loss that you have through a torque converter by using 2 dry clutches. Mm-hmm. So the increased shifting speed, I'm going to debate that a little bit. Everybody tells me how fast they shift, and sometimes I'm driving them going,
yeah, no.
That was 3/4 of a second. That was a long shift. Yep. I mean, these are sometimes they aren't.
Right.
I think that's overhyped.
Maybe in the performance applications, because you get these little hot rod BMWs come in here with the dual clutch transmissions, and I mean they shift like a typewriter.
Yeah, they shift
bang, 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 bang. Yeah. So fuel efficiency, though, yeah, you're right. You eliminated the torque converter, so you don't have that slip that you would have in an automatic. So it is, and that's why traditionally manual transmissions were thought of as more fuel efficient because they didn't have the torque converter. Yeah. That was the deal with that. But people don't like to drive manuals anymore. Yeah. And you can take a 16-year-old kid and plop him in a manual transmission; he'll just stare at it. Yeah. As a matter of fact, Solomon, my son, who's sitting here, we put him in a car and say, "Hey, go move this car to the back lot," and he'd come back and say, "I can't. It's a manual."
That's funny.
I should probably teach him how to drive a manual.
Yeah. That's a good skill to have.
It's a good skill to have. So we've got traditional automatic transmissions. Those somewhat have moved to CVTs. I don't feel like you're going to see CVTs in heavy trucks. I think they work good in light vehicles. They were traditionally, snowmobiles have CVT in a sense that's.
I don't think they work good in light vehicles either, especially where we're at. That's the biggest problem, and we bag on the Nissans because it's just like I mean, what do we got? 3, 5 Nissans a week in here.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Pretty common.
yeah. So, but we look at that and go, man, these things just fail left and right, and it's those sheave pulley sheaves will wear on the things, and then the
Mm-hmm.
pulleys won't move as far as they're supposed to. We see that a lot, and but one of the other things you have to consider is the market volume.
Uh-huh.
How many Nissan Altimas and Sentras are out there?
They sold a ton of those
They're
things.
a huge portion of the market, and they all have CVTs in them. So
It skews the way we see things a little bit.
yeah. We think these things have a lot of failures, but as a percentage of the overall fleet, it's still probably pretty high with them.
And I haven't looked at Nissan specifically to see how much of the market share they are, but I was looking at GM because I feel like we work on an awful lot of GM vehicles.
Yeah,
And I looked at the other day; they are 19% of the market share.
yeah,
So that means there's 1 in 5 vehicles on the road is a GM.
right.
So how much is that going to affect our perception of what we're working on all the time? God, it seems like we're working on GMs all the time. Well, yeah, because that's all of what's on the
'cause there's
road.
a lot of them out there.
Yeah. So so that kind of affects the perception of if something is good or bad. But then when it comes to Nissan CVTs, we can fix them. They don't always need to be replaced.
Yeah.
And we had a Murano here probably 2-3 weeks ago that we did a torque converter on.
Mhm.
And when we popped that one out, that one was later model, like 18, 19, something like that. But we popped it out, and looking at that CVT looked different than the one from just a couple years before.
Oh yeah,
It's like they beefed it up quite a bit.
yeah. There's been a lot of revisions in those. Yeah.
So there even among the Nissan
continuously.
brands, there's good ones and bad ones, and you see the model number because you're always writing it down on the transmission.
Yeah.
Some are more failure prone than others.
Yeah.
But they definitely can be fixed without replacing. A lot of times they do get replaced just because of the cost of rebuilding, the cost of the machining and the cones and the chains and all those things.
Yeah, when you get into the sheave and pulley wear, that's where we wind up with issues because those pulley sets are so expensive that it's
Very expensive, and not only do the surfaces of the cones wear out where the chain rides because basically it's a belt, but it's a steel belt. And so that happens. But the other thing that happens is essentially it's an adjustable pulley, and it's got to come up and down and up and down and up and down. And that is what we're seeing wear out a lot. So it just kind of gets to a point where it gets stuck.
Yeah,
It doesn't want to adjust RPM anymore.
They won't move properly.
So that's what a dual clutch transmission is. That's what a CVT transmission is. And the dual clutches, we didn't talk too much about that, but they feel weird.
yeah, they always at launch and that's probably the number one complaint with them because in a conventional automatic car, you have that torque converter there. So that creates kind of a disconnect between the engine and the transmission. So when we go to accelerate, it's
More
smoother.
gradual.
Yeah, it's smoother. But with the DCTs, they're trying to modulate a dry clutch. So if you've ever driven a manual car, when you go to take off, if you want to take off smoothly, you'll probably slip the clutch. You won't just let the clutch pedal out. It'll just slam into gear and you'll get a jerk out of the car.
Right.
So you kind of modulate. Well, now we have to use computers to do that. So it's difficult to do. It's amazing. The guys had some nerve trying to do this, I think, trying to shift them and everything using electronics and trying to modulate a pair of clutches even, because now you got 2 clutches that come on and off during shifts. But those are they have some unusual feels. You usually get a little bump out of them right at a launch. And like I said, the DPS 6s and the Fords, I think they shift slow. They drive me nuts when I drive them.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, man.
DPS 6. So dual, what is it? Dual,
I don't know what
dual
DPS.
power
Shift.
shower 6, and it's a 6-speed. So that's and a lot of these transmission model numbers make sense, and some don't. Like I'm thinking of some traditional like 10R80. So that's a 10-speed rear-wheel drive, and it's a Ford, and the 80 number is maybe something to do with the torque because they have an 80. But when you go to a 3/4 ton truck, then it's a 140 or something like that.
Yeah, and there's a 90. There's
Stuff in between.
Yeah, and that all relates to the load capabilities of the transmission.
So some good takeaways if you're a consumer. If you drive a Nissan, it is not the worst thing in the world. They can be failure prone, but you have to budget. because their transmissions do fail and they're not cheap.
One of the biggest things that we see too is they overheat here.
Uh-huh.
So, driving the car reasonably,
Is a good idea.
When you're going up big grades and stuff, don't just pin the throttle to the floor and
Don't
hold
flog
that thing
it.
there. Yeah,
Mhm.
slow down a little bit if that car is under a lot of load, because those transmissions will get hot and they will cook.
That's the road trip thing.
Yeah,
We get a lot, and there is, even on the Nissans, they'll have bulletins where they have a cooler kit. You can add a transmission cooler to it, and it's all lined out and
yeah.
designed and all that stuff. But overheating is a problem.
And they actually have strategies. If the transmission starts to get too hot, they'll back the throttle off you on you.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is throttle by wire, and they'll put the thing into a torque reduction to try to cool the transmission down. And that's a big complaint that we get is that I'm going uphill and all of a sudden the car just loses power. I can't hardly make it accelerate. You can pump the pedal, you can do anything you want, and they won't accelerate. They just do that until they cool down, and then they come right back.
The other thing you can't do on them is, I remember my grandpa growing up as a kid. He was a 2-foot driver.
Oh,
Yeah. He was always like,
yeah.
And so if you hit the brake on a Nissan while you're driving, it'll trip it out and throw it into a fail-safe mode.
Yeah, yeah. They go into a torque reduction if you're just dragging. If you're a 2-footed driver and you got your left foot sitting on that brake pedal, you don't have to press the brake pedal all the way to apply the brakes, but just
Enough.
just enough to close that brake switch. When it sees that brake switch goes closed, takes all the throttle away, takes all the timing away, backs the ratios off. You'll feel the car slow down.
So sorry, Grandpa, you can't 2-foot drive that
Yeah,
Nissan
not those.
CVT. So let's think. Nissan's got CVTs. Honda has got CVTs. Honda tried it in the 90s for a couple models.
Yeah,
And
way back.
we've seen them come back heavy with CVT. We're not seeing the same problems on the Hondas that we are on the Nissans.
Yeah.
Then we've got Subaru has had CVTs for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say they were an early pioneer in
Yeah.
CVTs.
Yeah.
And so, we see them a lot. We don't see them as failed. We see them as we do a lot of valve bodies. That's the hydraulic brain of the transmission.
Yeah. Solenoids fail. And,
Solenoids
you
fail,
have to replace the valve body. Yeah.
and they don't sell you a solenoid by itself, which is silly, but they don't,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but they have a heavy price tag if they fail in the Subarus. So that one is a little shocking to people.
Yeah.
They buy this Subaru and here they are, they've got a big problem. But they tend to get a lot of miles on them. I'm not seeing the failures. in the
We've only
Subarus.
had a few of them with the gear failures. Remember, we had one that we sent over, had a whine in it. We sent it over to the dealer, and the
Yeah.
dealer took care of it under
Oh yeah,
extended warranty.
no, that was a thing where the customer actually went to the dealer himself, and they quoted him like $12,000 for a transmission. He's
Yeah.
like, "Whoa, pump the brakes! I'm going to Tri-City." He comes to us, and we're like, "Oh man, this is still under warranty."
Yeah, there was an extended.
Yeah, a service campaign.
Yeah.
So we actually took it over to the same dealership. We got the transmission warranted out for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that saved him a bunch of dough.
And that was unusual. We don't see many of those.
No, yeah, it is unusual. Toyota is in the CVT business, but a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, and so I got to be careful with that because the Prius had a CVT in it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a little bit of a different animal than the other ones that we're talking about because instead of having split pulleys and chains, they just use a single, or some of them have two planetary sets in them,
Uh-huh.
and then we modulate the ratio using two motor generators, so
Mhm.
we can apply our load differently to different portions of that planetary and get infinite ratios. It's actually genius.
Oh, yeah.
The first
Yeah.
time I took one apart and figured out how it worked, I looked at it and went, "This is the most simple way to do it. This is so good."
So good.
It's complicated from the control side, but from the physical pieces that they needed to build this thing, it was like, "Oh, this is pretty slick." These guys,
Yeah.
somebody's thinking.
I like Toyota as a manufacturer. I watch them, and I've seen them. They didn't go headlong into CVT though.
They waited, and that was intentional.
Yeah, I think they waited that out, and they let the other manufacturers hit all the pitfalls.
Yeah.
And even now, not all the models have CVTs. It's somewhat limited.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's
where,
real limited.
where they're
yeah.
using them. So CVT is not necessarily a bad word. If you own a Nissan, become intimate with it. The other thing I would say as a consumer you can do to take care of your CVT is service it.
Service it.
Because it is a metal chain on metal pulleys, and they are working hard. And so there's going to be a lot of debris that's going to come off of that.
Mhm.
That'll do things like hang up the valves in there. They do have two filters, so they got a flat filter, which is when you pull the pan off, you're going to see that. And they generally have a conical style filter in the cooler flow
Mhm.
circuit of the transmission. So if you're getting it serviced, make sure both filters are getting changed out on the thing. And you can't over service a CVT. I would say every 30,000 miles is a safe bet.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good bet. And the other thing is keep the thing cool. Keep the cooling system in the car maintained, because that cooling system is the same cooling system that cools that transmission. And that transmission, if it's a belt and chain, it generates a ton of heat. You know, they just do that.
It's interesting because we're talking about the amount of change in the learning curve that's just happened in the last 10 years in the transmission
Yeah.
business. And so all your advice from your grandpappy about the car is no longer that applicable.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
my grandfather, he's the one that taught me how to work on cars.
Yeah.
And if he was around today, he would go, really?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
You know? And so I say that you couldn't take a technician from 10 years ago. If he got out of the business for 10 years and dropped him in the shop, he would be lost.
Yeah.
You know, the learning curve would be so much that he would be lost. So cars are changing, rules are changing, the way they do things, totally different. So we want to keep you in the know of the changes that are coming through. We appreciate you joining us. You can always, write, let us know what you want to hear about. We want to talk about topics that are interesting to you. Thanks for joining us on the Bumper to Bumper podcast. Well, hello, I'm Dave Riccio, your host of the Bumper to Bumper podcast, and I would like to thank you for tuning in. If you want one of your car questions to be answered on our podcast, tap the link in the description for a chance to have your question featured. And while you are there, we would love for you to like and subscribe to see more Bumper to Bumper podcasts in the future.